Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rowan Perez, Executive Director here at the Australian Chamber of Commerce in South Korea. The global COVID-19 pandemic has brought on unprecedented disruptions to our daily lives and working environments, making purpose-led leadership more critical than ever. To shed light on this important subject, AustCham Korea has launched its new Skills Workshop Series with today's session titled Purpose-Led Leadership in the Post-Pandemic Times, and is presented by the Chamber's newest member, Elsyung Consulting, a bespoke and holistic human resources consultancy. Purpose-led leadership is characterized by actions that gain and sustain employee engagement by motivating and aligning individual values to the broader organization's vision, mission, and objectives. It can be taken up by senior leaders or middle managers alike, and it helps to inspire employees at all levels of the organization. At the end of this session, we'll have a Q&A session, which we hope to answer some of your questions with our guest presenter. Now to begin, may I introduce Elsie Yung, founder and director of Elsyung Consulting. Over to you.
Thank you, Rowan. Hi, everyone. 안녕하세요. So I hope this session will give you more insights about this topic. So first of all, let me just share my screen. Okay. So thank you, Rowan, for introducing me, and also I'm happy really to take this opportunity for sharing my experience as a HR professional in terms, in particular, of sharing some of the insights across Asia. I think not necessarily, pandemic, obviously, affecting everyone globally. In particular, for Asia, I think it's more resonate us, as a leader or as a managerial positions in your organization. Okay, so let me get started. Okay. So my name is Elsie Yung. I'm from Hong Kong. I'm based here. But my history, actually, I work across different markets in my previous 25-something years HR experience. In particular, working with Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, Taiwan, and also Hong Kong, Macau. So my personal experience and as a HR professional will mainly focusing on organization development, and also at the same time to look at different processes and also different policies and things which create efficiencies and also engagement to our organizations and employees. My main focus also to support the CEO level, and also the regional managers level to look after their own personal brand, because I'm also qualified a professional color consultant in a way that, help people indeed to dress differently, to look better in their presentation and also in terms of their personal brand. So I hope this session will give you more insights about my experience. And also, as you look at that, my previous background mainly in the airline industries, and I'm sure that globally, these airline industries is actually quite in a challenge situation. So that's why I think also my experience, hopefully, can gain to support them in future as well as a consultancy firm. Okay. So let's get started for the agenda for today. So roughly I will use about, as Rowan said, roughly about 45-50 minutes on sharing some different topics. But at the same time, I also welcome thoughts and encourage, your comments as well, because I think it will be useful for some interactions. So first of all, I want to bring up, some reflections about the leadership, post pandemic times. In particular, for across Asia, what does it mean? And we talk about purpose, right? Today's topic, purpose-led leadership. So what does it mean in terms of purpose? Purpose versus goal in leading an organization. And then, in order to find the purpose, is actually also the journey of finding the why and also your passion in terms of your career and also in terms of your personal passion. From HR point of view, we always focus on employee experience. So that's why I also want to share some of the ideas of rethink and reinvent the employee experience to create impact to your organizations. And finally, some tips to turn your plan into actions. First, it's already mid-2021, so in July already. So what has changed globally? Okay, so looking at this picture, I think possibly you kind of resonates what happened, right? This is a dining place, and you can see all the crosses, avoid people sitting close to each other, something like that. First of all, we have new vocabulary. So what's that? In the past, even back in early 2019, we never heard about Zoom fatigue. Okay, even back at that time, a lot of companies they don't use Zoom. Maybe we used to use Skype, or some organizations they use Teams. Maybe some sort of different virtual platform, online platform to use video calls. Literally now, everyone, including students, they use Zoom, right? The more we use it, unfortunately, becoming fatigue. Another new vocabulary saying, pandemic. We also talk about different flattening the curve. And in Japan, I'm not sure whether, in the participants in here is that actually there are Japanese companies. So in Japan, they talk about 3 C's, avoid the 3 C's. So closed space, crowded places, and also close contact, something like that. So they have a, acronym of 3 C's. And in Hong Kong, we talk about social distancing. I believe in a lot of your places. Yeah, so those new vocabulary never happened before. You saw me now, of course, I'm in a little space in here, so no need for me to wear the mask. But in Hong Kong, as probably you are aware, it's a requirement. It's legally, we are require everybody to wear the mask when you go outside, even when you walk out from the corridor from your office, you need to wear the mask. Yeah, that's the new wardrobe addition, right? So now, remember, at the beginning, of course, the people rushing to find the mask. Everybody is shortage of mask at that time. And then, nowadays we talk about fashion now, to match your outfit of different color of mask. Anxiety and depression. So this is actually very critical because in particular in the workplace, as I said, Zoom fatigue, right? At the same time, because of working from home, a lot of people tend to create, the situation create a lot of anxiety. So as per the latest, Catalyst report, 90% of people during or post-pandemic times, they actually endure, a certain level of stress. Either you really burn out because you stay at home and work all the time, or facing the camera all the day, all day long, having, back-to-back meetings, facing the camera, not really having much interactions with real people. And at the same time, alone. A lot of people, they live by themselves, right? So these kind of things create the whole anxiety and depression. So which, as leader, as running the organization, definitely this is something we need to talk about. Interesting report showing the people, the consumption of alcohol indeed increases a lot, by at least, 60 to 70%. I'm not sure whether those reports are actually organized by the alcoholic, companies or the beverages company. But in Asia, a few locations, Japan, Korea, people tend to drink a lot of alcohol, right? So as a norm. So even, more at the time. For example, the reason behind, of course, fatigue, stress, and also talk about boredom, they feel bored. They are alone at home. And a lot of restaurants, they close early or even they're not opening. So that's why people feel much more easier, actually, might as well just buy some alcohol, go back home and drink at home. So that is definitely a problem, after all these number of months. So need to be aware of, from a wellness point of view. We call about new normal now. So we talk about, working from home, hybrid work. So in Hong Kong, we are actually much better in terms of curbing up, curbing the COVID situations. We are lucky, I would say, because we are start rolling out the vaccinations plan, literally for almost everyone. So personally, I've got 2 vaccinations already, and a lot of people, they indeed have that opportunity to do it. The new normal is a lot of companies, we try to go back to the office, but at different places, they are still working from home quite a bit. Even in Hong Kong, American companies, they tend to work like almost 70%, 80% of workforce, they work from home and they take shift. So new normal is you have to manage people from different locations, maybe even different time zones because people cannot travel. So for work, you might have to, long hours having meetings because of different time zones. That is the new normal now. And also, in terms of technology, the requirements of technology becoming much, much more important because of that reason. Okay, so that's something we need to bear that in mind. I would also encourage, your thoughts about what does it mean by new normal in your organization. Power of social media. Are we talking about social media is our friend or our foe? That means is our enemy. Okay. In the past, already social media create a very strong presence. A couple of years ago, like Google, Facebook, and different Twitter, different platforms, right? With the pandemic, even more people share information on social media. However, probably you notice some of the information is not correct. So create the tension, also create the even more anxiety about things because they don't know what's happening out there. So they will rely on social media to get information. Hong Kong is, personally, I'm not a big fan of, or maybe I'm not a huge user of Twitter. I know a lot of different other markets, they like Twitter a lot. Of course, Twitter is the real-time, almost like real-time updates. People talk about things, rightly or wrongly, actually create some tension in there. People are not, of course, they don't agree with each other. They tend to, maybe attacking with each other, things like that happen. So bear in mind also, social media play an important role in an organization too, because people may voice different opinions on social media in terms of their company practice, in terms of management style, and in terms of the company direction, whether they engage their, employees. That could be possible, people showing on the social media. So that's one thing also changed a lot over the last 12 to 18 months. A little bit of reflections for leaders. Everybody know her, Jacinta? When first pandemic came in, so they decided to close the border immediately. I guess for Australian members, you know what exactly happened. So we must go hard and we must go early. Okay, so that's her way of delivering the message, right? Another leader or ex-leader, one day is like a miracle, it would disappear. Okay, very different approach. And I believe, different leaders, they could have different, a way of managing the situations. But it's just something, food for thoughts, what sort of leader are you in your organization then? So are you the one who make that decision, or not sure? Or maybe you reckon you encounter some leaders, they might say, I don't know, I have to wait, see how it goes. Possibly, yeah, some just reflections as a leader. So now the second part, I want to talk about purpose and goal. Okay, what does it mean? Why we want to focus on purpose rather than goals? So as per Oxford Learner's Dictionary, let's go back to some academic explanation of purpose. So purpose is the intention, aim, or function of something, and the thing that is something that is supposed to achieve. Meaning that is important and is also valuable to you. So those are the key words, okay? So intention, important and valuable. And also at the same time, the ability to plan something and work successfully to achieve it. So achievements. When we look at goal, a lot, of course, is quite naturally, say, every year in your organization, we need to set goals because that is for our performance review. That is something you want to achieve, you hope to achieve. Okay, so that is slightly different in terms of purpose and goal. So how it, kind of translate back to our language in an organization and also as a leader, how to look at purpose. We always link very closely together purpose with culture. Okay, so when you look at an organization, when you run the business, of course, a lot of companies, they set their mission and vision, company goal with company objectives or company mission vision is a statement, right? That's what they want to achieve. As also the company purpose, okay? And they, again, like at the same time, they set the company culture. That's how people can get together to achieve the same common purpose as in the organization. So let's talk about a little bit about culture. So in here, I want to share a little bit of the Barrett model here. So who is Richard Barrett? He is actually a British author who writes about leadership development and also values, consciousness, as well as cultural evolution in business and society. So he set up a company, it's called Value Center. So he focuses on building up a model, like actually comprising of human motivations and also leadership behaviors. I believe everyone know about Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? So it's a triangle, like from the bottom, the basic needs to up there, like a different, higher needs of everyone. So he make use of this hierarchy of needs model to test over, different experiences and thousands of organizations. And indeed, to identify 7 areas of those behaviors and motivations. And all of those are like a proven and extraordinary useful map for understanding the values of your employees and stakeholders. At the same time, also mean that we need to find a more supportive and productive leadership between them, and be productive relationship between the leaders and also the employees. So what sort of leaders are you? And also what are motivations that we need to understand from our employees? And deeper the alignment of purpose across your organization. So we look at values equals to behavior and also equals to culture. They all link together, okay? So maybe, you can take a minute, to really, maybe 30 seconds to think about what is your company value? And what sort of behaviors that your organization wants your employee to demonstrate? And under what sort of culture that you want to cultivate for your organization? Okay, so I think that is also set a stone or a first step for you to identify you as a leader, how you weave in your leadership style or leadership approach to take into considerations the values, behavior, and also the culture. Let me just share with you, under this recent research from Barrett's model. So they measure top 20 values movement across Asia organizations pre-COVID and during COVID, or I think it's also adaptable for post-COVID situations. So when you look at all those values, okay, so there are probably, like I showed 21 of them. So on the left-hand side, you can see the pre-COVID culture there, okay? So those were the highlighted ones. So you can see the orange part is indeed, values not among the top values during COVID-19. So they were not, okay? However, when you look at the during COVID culture, they are slightly different. So let's look at a little bit, deep dive in a little bit of the pre-COVID culture there, okay? So the one achievement, okay, so a lot of companies, they look at achievements, like continuous improvement, maybe even from their culture or maybe mission statement, or even on a few keywords of describing the organization, their continuous improvement. They will seek for high achievements. Some organizations, they look at high ethics. Well, long hours, why is there is the L there is actually is a limited values, which means it's a negative values. So long hours, but yeah, so not really the top 20. But indeed, it exists. Long hours, long working hours. A lot of the markets, they have very, very long working hours. Results orientation, compassion, excellence, leadership development, so on and so forth, right? Those values are not new to all of us. Because when you look at, like we need to measure, for example, number 7, we need to measure employee engagement. It's always organizations have an employee engagement survey, right? Measure different, like engagement level. Well-being, yes, yeah, potentially. Companies also look into well-being perspective and things like that. However, when you look at the right-hand side, you can actually see quite a significant difference, like the shift. You look at the little green arrows in there. Those are the shifts. So the first one is actually digital connectivity. So people are looking into really have that connections over digital because we can't see each other face to face with different restrictions. So that actually create a shift. People look into that. Yeah, this is important. Adaptability. We have to change a lot of our mindset because we have to adapt different, working model now. Even for leaders, how to really engage and, as I said, how to manage different workforce, across the country or across even different geographical locations. Number 8, cost reduction. Okay, so that is one very, very critical values. A lot of people saying that, okay, so we have to tighten up our belt, squeeze the lemon, cut down all the costs because we are not having good business now with all the challenges. So that's why make sure that is high on our list. A lot of companies, they say even the downturn of the business, they have to cut staff, cut their salary, and to have a huge redundancies. Positive attitude. I think this is important. Remain that positivity given with all these things happening, right? Safety, agility. That safety bit, of course, like globally, we look at vaccines, a rollout, avoid close contacts, make sure, like from the medical system point of view, they have sufficient resources to tackle the patients. At the same time, from an organization point of view, we also look into employee safety, make sure they're all right. That also linked with well-being, agility. So we need to be agile, right? So we need to make sure that we react on situations pretty quickly, very robust decisions. Information sharing, managing well under pressure, and also open communication. Okay, so just in this graph, I just want to show you what people feel that are actually important now. So that is actually part of one of the benefits, because I understood that there was actually a question came in before the webinar saying that what has been the greatest benefit to leadership in spite of the pandemic. I think those are the change of the values, create an opportunity for all of us as a leader, how to put in our practice into more purposeful way of doing our business now. Okay, so let's deep dive into a couple of our values in there. So the main key takeaways. Many of the top values experienced during COVID are also requested to go forward. Continuous adaptability, agility, teamwork, digital connectivity, the balance between home, work. Probably is a new term now, is not work-life balance. It's how you actually manage both at the same time. So it's not work and home separate. We kind of merge them together, right? Because you work from home. Next to you might be your kid doing homework. And maybe the kid is on Zoom as well. In Hong Kong, we face the same challenge. At one point, in my household, everybody work from home, right? So I've got like 4 people online using the same Wi-Fi, which is really, really huge challenge. And at times, if I have to do video calls, I have to ask the rest of the family members to switch off their cameras, if possible, because the Wi-Fi bandwidth is not sufficient enough. Cross-group collaboration, different departments, different geographical locations, even with different vendors, partners, so on and so forth. So those are the things that is on the right track. New directions now. Okay, so along with all those positive momentum, there are in organization cultures, there are a few new values being requested. Okay, so employee engagement. Although, as I said at the beginning, employee engagement is always there. People look into how to build a strong team with the high engagement rate, and also people are willing to stay behind, willing to take up additional responsibilities and things like that. With the new directions, under the pandemic is even higher expectation on that. And innovation, different tools. So I personally, I never used these kind of tools before, right? In particular, when I was in the corporate world, I've got IT department to help me. So not really necessarily for me to think of different tools. Whilst I'm now an entrepreneur, I have to make sure that I work effectively. So I deploy different tools, online tools, maybe different apps to help me. That's the innovation. Continuous learning, because now without the with the limitations, people cannot really get together for learnings. In a lot of organizations, you guys, I believe that you have face-to-face, trainings, right? But nowadays, possibly not. So how does it work then for continuous improvement of your employees and particular yourself too as a leader? And open communication. Okay. So let's go to the, different leaders, right? So that under Barrett model, they talk about 7 types of leaders. So from the bottom, number 1 type of leader to a more visionary leader. Okay. So when you look at, number 1, of course, we just make sure everything is okay. Kind of create, stability in the organization. So that's fundamental. When you move up the stairs, you can see that, different leadership is required now. Look at the visionary leader. You can see that the expectation as a visionary leader is living with purpose, creating new futures, long-term perspective, ethics, wisdom, and social responsibilities, because these are all the sustainable values that we want to bring into our organization. As a leader as well, being able to be sustainable in future. So that's very interesting, like a topic. And also like, obviously we can go into more details later on if we have that opportunity to really look at different types of leader and assess where you are in terms of your leadership style. Let's go into an acronym here, like AGILE, of course, is agile. What does it mean then? Approachable leadership. Okay, so as a leader, we need to make sure that we engage our employees, engage, like the organization. So doesn't mean that, you have to call them up every now and then to show, like your concern, or maybe, show your, different views. At the same time, what we mean approachable is that it's an open door policy. We expect a more open communication between yourself as a leader and with your employees and with your team. More grounded, okay? Post-pandemics, a lot of things change. Even the business directions change. That's why people look into a more realistic, more pragmatic way of doing things. Grounded, that means, like maybe you also encourage your teams to have different ideas. Might be their view, their perspective, because things, like leaders always have a blind spot, right? So your team might have other different ideas to share with you so that the whole organization can move forward to have more effective approach to do things. Innovative, that's what I'm saying. I mean, make use of different tools, creative ideas, or even, think of solutions outside of the box. In the past, probably you never thought about, I have to manage. Yeah, even though you are working in a local role, you don't anticipate to work, like manage different people with different time zones or different people in different locations. One people sitting in the office and the other one sitting at the kitchen table, things like that. Yeah, so creative, more innovative, that means you create an environment that facilitate this, what we call is the new normal, right? At the same time, as a leader, you also encourage ideas. A leverager, okay, L. As I said, one of the values is actually coming up is cost cutting, right? So in that case, a lot of organizations, you don't have that resources anymore, either from a financial point of view or maybe from a, like manpower point of view. So that means you need to engage with different stakeholders, like partners, vendors, even with like different people in the group. If you are in a global organization, you might have different, market companies, right? All together as a group. So you need to leverage that. Think of a way of delivering the same purpose as an organization, but at the same time also to leverage their help. In particular for entrepreneur, definitely, I cannot afford to hire, a few, even though, because I'm, a small organization right now, so I cannot afford to hire a lot of people, but I leverage the partnerships with the vendors, and also I leverage the partnership with my partners, collaborative partners. So I think it's a good way to really think through whether I can, in your organization as a leader, can you leverage others' help? Finally, E, empathetic. Recently, I joined a business event. So as I said, I'm lucky. I can go to events face to face now. So one of the companies, the CEO of their companies, they actually share what they have been doing, empathetic initiatives to their employees over the pandemic times. So one company, they share that they actually give away, if they attain a certain, years of service, they also give away some paid day off, like in the West, they call sabbatical leave, which is unpaid. However, what they offer is a paid day off, like even up to a month or 2 months. The reason behind is they understood that, over pandemic times, a lot of people were stressful, and they really want to award those people with putting in their efforts. So that's why they have extra day offs for them to do whatever they want. It's a paid day off. Another company, they say that, the CEO actually, they group people, different people together, CEO in person, to check in with them and see how's things going, like maybe in groups of 4 to 5 people every day, in different groups. So the CEO would check in personally, because as you imagine, in a large organization, probably you won't see your CEO very often, right? If you work in the front line, for example, work in the front line space. So they try their very best to show empathetic and also put in different policies and processes in place to support that. So it's just a food for thoughts for everyone, on the call, and just to, like agile, remember that acronym agile, and go from there. So when we talk about passion, we are actually indeed look and find the why. And we talk about purpose, right? So the why and your passion is all come together, form your passion, form your purpose. It is not what you do. It is how you do it, and also why you do it. The strengths and your passion you bring to the table, no matter where you are seated. So it doesn't really matter whether you are CEO, you are senior leadership, or you are a manager, or you are an employee in your organization. It's always, there is a purpose to do things. Let's start with your life story. It's just a little personal kind of tips for everyone to really look into how to find my purpose. Then I don't know, never thought about it. So how should I do? What should I do? Maybe a couple of questions. You can try to ask yourself, okay, so what did you especially love doing when you were a child? And describe that moment, how you make you feel. Describe 2 of your most challenging life experience and how have they shaped you? And the third one is, what do you enjoy doing in your life now that helps you to get going? Okay. So every time if I ask those questions, I also, in particular, like the one in the first question. Just a little sharing, because before this call, I had a coaching session with one of my clients, actually in Japan. He's the MD of that organization. He's a local Japanese, but he's running a Australian business based in Japan. So we talk about this topic, purpose, right? So we talk about our childhood memory. So it was quite funny. We share the same kind of memory. I mean, we probably the same age, so that's why we could share the same memory as watching a particular TV program. In Hong Kong, we also a big fan of Japanese culture. Now, of course, we are also a lot of people are a big fan of Korean culture, K-pop. Used to be Japanese culture is very, very popular in Hong Kong. So we talk about the same TV program that we watched as a child before. It was quite funny. So my leadership purpose then, okay. So my experience as a entrepreneur now, so I'm running my own business. I actually, when I talk about my purpose, I recall myself back to the most challenging experience. And also in my past as an HR professional, I realized that a lot of the HR processes and also a lot of the practices in the organization is actually quite complicated. In particular, dealing with people, right? So when you're managing staff, it could be very complicated. And a lot of leaders, they are so reluctant to deal with people because they say, oh, I don't want to deal with that. HR, you are the head of HR, so you deal with that. So in return, I realized that my business is that I can use my HR and also professional branding experience on providing bespoke and back to basics solutions to make people's lives easier. I think this is also it is very important for my purpose. I want to make it easy for people. I want to make it more tailor-made because every organization is different. At the same time, I want to make everyone's lives easier. I think that leaders should focus on getting more business, not worrying about managing challenging situations about people and worrying about, like how people behave, So that's my leadership purpose of running my own business now, as an example. So I would like to share, a little bit tips of rethink and reinvent employee experience to create an impact. As I said, myself, I'm really passionate to build my purpose on creating a better experience to the organization. So from performance, control, and hierarchy, that's the usual HR role, right? I remember, every time when I talk about I'm doing HR, people scared because they say, oh, HR is a policeman. We focus on compliance, we focus on controlling. But now, employee experience, we put focus on people. We are so adaptable because we need to tweak our approach in order to fit for purpose, right? For our organization and working together. So that's this whole shift in managing employees now. So what are the potential enhanced initiatives that we can put in place for our organizations then in order to find your purpose? Expand and enhance flexible working policies and practices. Because of the change, as I briefly talk about, we need to put in place. Because now, the old type of strict to the rule policies doesn't work anymore. People are so fluid now. They work here and there, different hours, different locations. We need to look into a more flexible arrangement for them. In terms of careers, potentially, that's what I'm saying, we don't have a huge amount of resources to hire external candidates. Potentially, we need to put in place an internal talent mobility in order to shift around our internal talents. Doesn't really matter they can travel or not, or they, mobile or not, because it's still possible that you can work in different markets to serve the same purpose of achieving the same, business objectives, right? So potentially you might want to put in some mobility practices in place in your organizations to make it more robust and make sure that you engage the right talent to be retained in your organizations. Analytics is so important now. So as simple as that, really to locate where they live. And also, in particular, I remember when I was at the beginning of pandemic, I was still with ESOP. We need to keep track of people, whether they live in that area or they have been encountered with so and so, potential, people that have virus and things like that. So all the HR analytics are so important to identify potentials, identify risk, and also to understand, the benefit selections. Because when we look at purposeful staff policies, right? A vanilla approach or maybe off-the-shelf approach, it doesn't fit in anymore. Probably we need to fix, a pick and choose different benefits for people, for the organization to opt, so that make sure that is more personable. Transparency of career progression for flexible workers. Under the normal performance system, yeah, people are looking into a hierarchical change, right? So from, the career ladder. Now, with all the changes happening, people potentially not looking into a vertical hierarchy in terms of career progression. People might look into, horizontal move. So, as an organization, possibly you need to make it transparent to your employees. That is the purpose. We want to create career progression for different people, not necessarily as a vertical move now. Access to remote health and benefits options that actually relate some sort of, as long as you have the right HR analytics to give you the insight so that you can make that considered decisions as a leader. Finally, talk about learning. Okay, so when you look at innovative ways of employee learning options now, so you might want to make use of the mass open online courses like EDX. I use EDX personally. I quite like it. If you don't know about this platform, you can Google it, do some research. EDX actually a lot of the prestige universities like the Harvard or any other like Hong Kong, Hong Kong universities, they put in online courses free of charge. So also once again, and also encourage flexibility as a leader, create that learning culture, learning values in your organizations to encourage people to use online courses, not necessarily to have face-to-face anymore. So last but not least, we talk about actions then. So today, we look at the purpose, we look at the values, and we look at the cultures. First of all, I think for you as a leader, you need to decide your purpose statement. Just like myself, like I decide my leadership purpose statement. And then look into goals now, like to more look at the granular level. We indeed, from a purpose point of view, you actually reverse that process. So you look at outer goals, like look at 3 to 5 years goals first, and then work backward. 2 years, 1 year, and who are those key stakeholders in order to facilitate the whole process. Okay, so bear that in mind, you look at the broader picture. More, I would say, or more on a helicopter view, what you want to achieve as a leader or what you want to achieve as a career. I think it's also important, not only looking at from an organization point of view, also at a personal point of view, and then work backward. What you need to do now in order to achieve that 3 to 5 years goals. Just some examples before we wrap up. Those are the, some examples for you maybe to have a look. On the right-hand side is the traditional development planning. So we use a lot of standard business language, right? And at times we focus on the weaknesses and to address performance. So you don't do it well, or you need to improve on this, things like that. That rings the bell, right? And we always state a business or a career-driven goal. Okay, you have to do it. What you have to do it. How many percentage of growth that you need to implement? Like how many savings that you need to achieve? Things like that. Measures again success using matrix tied to the firm's mission and goals. That's what I'm saying. All those matrix, right? For HR, we always measure engagement level. Like how much increase that you want to implement for the engagement score for next year. Focus on the present, working forwards. Okay, so yeah, present. I'm at this stage. I need to work this year, next year, things like that. Very generic. So adjusting the job or the role. And outside the office, you pretty much ignore, like I need to focus on the goals in the office, in the organization, because I'm the employee, or maybe I'm the leader to run that organization. So I need to focus on that. However, when you look at the purpose to impact planning on the left-hand side, you shift it around. use different language, more meaningful, purpose-infused language. And you focus on the strengths rather than, like the areas of improvement, right? So maybe one of the tools that we always use at the corporate solution is that the Strengths Finder by Gallup. So you can focus on the strengths. Put on a statement for a leadership purpose that explain how you will lead. How? Not focusing on what, but how and also why. Set incremental goals related to living your leadership purpose. Focus on the future. That's why the circle is about. And working backward. What you do now in order to achieve that 5-year goal in future. The purpose is unique to you, addresses who you are as a leader. Of course, as I said, an organization, you guys have the purpose. As a leader, you have your own purpose too. And finally, really look after yourself, take a holistic view of work and family. It all comes together, like not only focusing on work at the same time from the personal level as well. Okay, so I'm looking at the time now, is leave behind probably about 7 minutes to go before we wrap up. So I'm welcoming any Q&As then.
Elsie, thank you very much for your insightful presentation. And as you mentioned, we have some time now for some Q&A. I do have a couple questions here, and I might start off with one in my chat here. As a founder or a leader, how do you encourage employees to consistently adapt to new skills?
Okay, I think first of all, walk the talk as a leader. I realize that as a mom too, I have to walk the talk. Otherwise, people they won't follow because Elsie is not doing that. So most simple, back to basics, walk the talk, and constantly demonstrate the same behavior. So be consistent too. You say one thing, continuously do the same thing.
That's some great tips there. And the next one is, I know that you mentioned before about the new normal, and a lot of organizations at AustCham Korea are going back to the new normal or creating the new normal, which is returning from remote working to the office environment. And there's some challenges for some leaders to encourage their workers to obviously come back to the office. Do you have any tips that the leaders could give in handling employees' expectations of wanting to work at home more and get them back into the office?
Yeah, I think you raise this is a very good question, because a lot of organizations facing the same. Because initially, that's what I'm saying. 100% work from home, and then now progressively 60%, and then 40%, and becoming 100% working in the office. People tend to not liking it because they feel more comfortable, right? Working at home maybe. Yeah. So my tips maybe also to my clients is that communication is very important. I think people see the benefits of coming back to the office is about engagement, about communication, and also to set that expectation of like a joining force together, because working from home is you are alone, right? You cannot really interact with people. So as a leader, need to create that environment people can fit in back together. Some organizations, they have now hot desking. So even more difficult now because of cost cutting or whichever. So I think my advice is that, for leader, have to encourage them and set that scene that people feel more comfortable working together. Communication is very important.
Yeah. And another question here, what effective HR strategy have you found the most effective during these pandemic times? Is it all about, you're talking about agile before, it's all about being, flexible and agile, or is it, is there a big change when it comes to the approach that leaders need to give when it comes to handling employee matters?
Okay. My experience, because I was actually really gone through the whole, almost like the whole pandemic throughout my corporate career. Okay. I think very on the spot decision. So which is very agile decision is important. One of the examples was that I mentioned about mask. Okay, so pandemic actually kicked in China, Hong Kong first. The rest of the markets, they were not at that time. So they were not prepared at all. So at the time that Hong Kong already had insufficient masks, that came Korea, Japan, Singapore, or even Australia. They're out of masks everywhere. Okay, so we actually take the lead as an HR, as a regional lead, to source the mask from the rest of the world and then ship it to all those countries. Because this is safety, right? As ESOP, we operate store and people facing each other still. The store didn't close. So that is a safety issue there. Yeah, our staff were so worried about looking after our customers. That is the very quick decision we made in order to support the company. So I think HR has a very important role to play to make that quick decision.
Yep, that's great. One here, do you think that purpose-led leadership differs between Korea and, for example, in Australia? Because as we know, the cultures are very different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think Korea, I can see in my experience, Koreans, they are also very, driven, they want to do things. They're not fluffing around. Whereas in other markets, they could be they talk. That's the culture. Okay. So I'm not saying right or wrong here. They like to talk first before react. For Asian culture, in particular Korean, my experience that we just do it. We have to do it. So I think for managing crisis, that I definitely see the difference there. Yeah.
Great. And one last question, any tips or examples for leadership to respect, support, encourage individual employees' personal cultures and backgrounds, especially with remote working environments, and particularly when it comes to multicultural working groups? So I guess that dichotomy of working obviously with multicultural teams across multiple locations.
Okay. My tips is that really from the bottom of the heart to feel empathetic to them. Yeah, I remember we did the engagement survey at ESOP, so it's under my times during pandemic. That was the highest engagement score that we had, to be honest, because we did a lot of different measures and we feel empathetic for the people. I think people can feel it because you really treat them as a human being, because always tend to be, as I joke around, large organizations, our employee is only a number, okay? Whereas in an organization, if you really treat your people well, you treat them as a human being. Yeah, so they have feelings, they have their emotions, right? So they voice out their worries. So we address them immediately. Okay, so that is actually the most touching points that I'm being the regional head of HR. It's actually the highest engagement score that we had during pandemic times. Yeah, so I think that's one food for thought for leaders. Sometimes we just talk to them as a real person to understand what their pain points are and try to adjust those. Yeah, be flexible and then try your best to be transparent. If you can't do it, you just say, sorry, I can't do it, but I will try my best. Maybe other solutions to mitigate those.
Fantastic. We are out of time, but I do thank you very much for all your insights on today's topic. Thank you to all those who attended. If you do want some more information about Elsyung Consultancy, we'll be sure to send them out via email with the slides and also a copy of today's session. Once again, thank you very much for everyone attending. Thank you, Elsie, for your time and insights, and welcome to AustCham Korea. It's a delight to have you on board. We will be hosting several new other workshops in the coming months, so be sure to stay tuned via our Facebook, LinkedIn, and other SNS platforms. Thank you very much, everyone, and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you so much. 감사합니다. 감사합니다. Thank you.